What you're telling me, there was an accounting scam. We paid on our landline bills money every month for years and years and years. Wireless took that. It didn't go to any government entity. It didn't go into a trust fund. It went into their pockets directly.
For their wireless schemes, and they want to replace that wire to your house that is safer, faster, more reliable, more secure, and more affordable, despite what they say. We have the evidence from pro-wireless economists at the Benton Group that after three decades, any short-term savings from wireless deployment in the rural areas disappears. And so investments should be based on long-term planning, not short-term politics. So even on the affordability metric, fiber is better.
Well,
So they diverted the money.
Yeah, they diverted the money. So Big Wireless has got the money, and it's hundreds of billions of dollars. That's amazing. We talked to some engineers a couple of years ago, Hank Allen and I know it's for safetechnology.org if you want to look it up. And all the engineers says what you're saying. It's safer, it's cheaper, it lasts longer, 50 to 100 years, I'm told, that the fiber optic will last. And then the bandwidth of the amount of data. Am I correct? That a lot more data can go down that pipe. I compare it, maybe I'm wrong, but wireless is like a pop bottle and the fiber optics is more like the ocean. Is that a kind of a good visual?
Oh, exactly. Under no metric is wireless superior.
No metric.
Under no metric, except telecom profits. And that's why they want BEAD money, the taxpayer infrastructure money to bridge the broadband digital divide, to move from fiber to the last mile to everyone's home to wireless, fixed wireless. They want the towers, especially the 5G small cell towers, put on every other street pole closer and closer to your bedroom and your children's classrooms. And they wanted to monetize our data and also to get infrastructure profits when they have to replace antennas that have a short life, and just the regular upkeep that is required with the expensive energy usage, because wireless also is known as an energy hog.
The following information is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to diagnose, treat, prevent, cure, or prescribe for any medical or psychological conditions. Seek out the opinion of a qualified healthcare professional if you need medical attention. The guests of this show provide their own opinions and may not represent the values or beliefs of Living Waters Wellness Center or Whole Body Detox Show. And welcome everyone to today's Whole Body Detox Show. I'm David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center. Living Waters Wellness Center was formed after we discovered how to heal my body from multiple symptoms, including allergies, asthma, chronic fatigue, back pain, psoriasis, acne, hives, yeast infections, and finally cancer, and I did it all naturally. After 20 years of trying numerous different treatments, medical treatments, cleanses, iridology, muscle therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, homeopathy, naturopathy, those experiences led us to discover that recipe that led to become known as the 4 Natural Laws of Healing. Combining multiple natural healing modalities to fully detox and cleanse the body and allowing the body to take the perfect nutrition to fully restore the body back to its innate health. This became known as a 10-day healing retreat. We've helped thousands of people just like you get their health restored so they can live their life to the fullest. And if you want to learn how you can get your body back to living your best life, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on that link, 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video. Or call the office at 208-3789-911. Good morning, everyone. David DeHaas. Well, today's show is focused on the biggest existential threat to humanity. What happens in the next few weeks and months to come in Congress will determine whether or not some of you lose up to 25% of the value of your home, go into AFib, get glioblastoma brain cancer, maybe experience brain fog. You could become infertile. Maybe your kids have ADHD, or you have severe fatigue, or grandkids will get cancer and you don't know why. Or maybe we lose so many of our pollinators we can't grow food, and we see massive forest fires like we did in the summer of 24. This threat is looming because our representative, Congressman Russ Fulcher, is championing 2 bills to go along with several others that take away the right of the states to regulate where cell towers are located. They're calling it the digital divide. We must fund the digital divide. Sounds like we are living in the dark ages, but it's a big wireless marketing effort to control the broadband market. What's broadband? Well, broadband means data, emails, videos, streaming services. It has nothing to do with getting cell phone and text service. It's about big wireless stealing customers from cable to enhance the value of their stock. Sadly, big wireless cannot be sued for the health ramifications. Yes, you heard that correctly. Just like big pharma has immunity of liability from vaccines causing harm, big wireless can't be sued for giving you brain cancer or causing AFib or any of the other diseases. And yes, it's clearly been proven that with over 18,000 studies, these new antennas put out a beam-forming radiation that can maim and kill. That is why the Department of Defense calls them directed energy weapons. That's right. The Department of Defense calls cell towers directed energy weapons because they are and they have been used in war. Our special guest today is Charles Froman. Charles Froman is a former lobbyist in the title and mortgage banker industry. He's a former congressional staffer. He worked on the Cato Institute, was a teacher, and he worked with John Mackey, the co-founder of Whole Foods, and they started the conscious capitalist revolution. He worked on the presidential campaign for Libertarian Gary Johnson, then got his license for insurance, selling medical cost savings accounts. He worked during the pandemic on Capitol Hill, working to get the clot shot stopped for kids. He worked on lifting the ban for the non-vaccinated during the pandemic so they could travel. He's a lobbyist for the world's largest health freedom network, and he hosts a podcast called Freedom Hub. Charles Froman, welcome to the show. How did you get involved in being concerned about cell towers, electromagnetic radiation?
Well, it's like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said about his involvement with vaccines. It was accidental. He resisted it. He was a big-time Democrat, didn't like the vaccine choice ladies, but he was forced to read the studies by a persistent lady and realized mercury was a dangerous adjuvant in vaccines. And that's how I got involved with the vaccines before wireless, was by accident. Wireless, let's see. Well, actually, it was because the main lawyer lobbyist against the unsafe deployment of towers, Odette Wilkins, a technology attorney suffering the 5G rollout in New York City, hired me in the mid-2000s to be the lobbyist for her nonprofit back then against persecution of animal rights activists. There was an obscure law that still no one knows about that will cage you if your protest against mink farms or dangerous animal experimentation hurts the profit of a corporation to a certain amount, such that you are thus a animal rights terrorist, and the penalties are ratcheted up because the word terrorism is a death knell for anyone who's a dissident. So I brought her around to a lot of mostly Republican staffers who agreed that this was a threat to free speech and the right to protest. And then for some reason, we connected again a few years ago, and she was becoming the main wireless lobbyist. And I guess I had a personal experience. Yeah, right here. By coincidence, I have my old analog meter for electricity. And I didn't want to have the smart meter on my house because I was learning that this stuff was dangerous. And I could only opt out to a non-communicating meter, not an analog meter. This is an old time
Yeah.
analog meter. You see the dials. This is not digital, so it's harder for them to lie that there's some transmitter in there. So it's safer. But you can't do that in Virginia, and in most states you probably can't either. They're going to give you a non-communicating digital meter that could be turned on that has other problems, namely what's called dirty electricity, and it also is a fire hazard. So I guess my personal experience
Wow.
suffering my utility monopoly in Virginia denying me a meter that I wanted, and I don't like being bullied. I don't like government goons and or their corporate cronies partnering with them to deny my rights to run my life as I see it as a human being. So I learned from Odette and Mary Bauer, this radio frequency engineer here in Virginia, who's an expert witness in a lot of court cases around the country. And Odette knew me, so she brought me on to do all the lobbying for this effort. So I curate presentations for congressional offices based on their committee assignments so that whatever we ask them is relevant to what they can do based on their committee assignments. Are they on the relevant committee? Energy and commerce or natural resources or ag. There's a lot of committees relevant to wireless because it's so ubiquitous and has so many vectors of assault when it comes to us. It could be on the farms, it could be in the national parks, it could be on the cell towers near your neighborhoods or your children's schools. And luckily, RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, just ordered a study on wireless harms at HHS, Health and Human Services, the department he runs for Trump. And that's going to make the Republicans, who thus far have been carrying the water of telecom, hopefully think twice about what they're doing. Maybe once they finally recognize the evidence that has been there for decades about the danger of wireless radiation, they will actually work with us to make sure that the deployment that we all want convenient broadband, is safe. We learn in this issue that 4G towers broadcast for miles. and thus don't have to be zoned outside your bedroom or your children's classroom. They can zone it miles from your neighborhood and your classrooms and even where you work or your nearby parks where you go play and walk the dog. If something broadcasts miles, you can figure out through zoning where to place these towers safely. And we can have our convenience with mobile broadband when we travel, and at home, we can have a wire, a cable, or a fiber to our house. Doesn't mean we can't have a router inside the house, but at least for the sake of everyone else, our neighbors, what's going to connect us is not a tower outside our bedrooms, but a wire. So that's all that the safe tech community is asking for. Deployment to get the convenience that is safe. It's not a lot to ask. And by the way, the 2020 Irregulators lawsuit in the DC Circuit, another court case, exposed the fact that everyone who has had a landline over the past decade has paid a surcharge in exchange for a promised wireline connection to what's called the last mile, to your home. That's a scandal worth hundreds of billions of dollars. So why are we even having this debate? We've already paid for a wired connection to every home in America. Yet in Congress, the Democrats and Republicans are arguing about taxpayer subsidies to make broadband affordable or to give telecom money for what's called a BEAD program to deploy fiber and wireless into the rural areas. Completely unnecessary, a waste of taxpayer money. We've already paid the surcharge on the landlines. Make telecom pay that money back. They diverted it to their wireless schemes. They maybe legally under accounting guidelines under the FCC, which were loose. Well, then have oversight hearings on the accounting guidelines that allowed these cross subsidies to screw us over. We've been screwed over. We've been screwed over by telecom. It's the same playbook as pharma. Pharma denies our informed consent when it comes to vaccines. They suppress the science on its dangers. RFK is cleaning that up right now. They've captured the bureaucracies until now with the RFK, and they're immune from liability. Telecom, denying our informed consent, property owners, to cooperate with local governments to zone these towers safely far from our bedrooms. There's an FCC proposal to preempt that zoning. There's a bill that's passed Energy and Commerce that Fulcher's on, 2289, that preempts that zoning opportunity for property owners. They've had old FCC rules that preempted long ago. They've Section 6409 from 2012 allows preemption with additional antennas on existing towers. The deck is stacked against us.
Let's back up for just a
And
moment. We back up just a moment.
yeah,
What you're telling me, there was an accounting scam. We paid on our landline bills money every month for years and years and years and years. Wireless took that. It didn't go to any government entity. It didn't go into a trust fund. It went into their pockets directly.
for their wireless schemes, and they want to replace that wire to your house that is safer, faster, more reliable, more secure, and more affordable, despite what they say. We have the evidence from pro-wireless economists at the Benton Group that after three decades, any short-term savings from wireless deployment in the rural areas disappears. And so investments should be based on long-term planning, not short-term politics. So even on the affordability metric, fiber is better.
Well,
So
we've
yeah,
had
they
Hank and I,
diverted the money.
yeah, they diverted the money. So Big Wireless has got the money, and it's hundreds of billions of dollars. That's amazing. We talked to some engineers a couple of years ago, Hank Allen and I, with Idahoans for Safe Technology, idahoansforsafetechnology.org if you want to look it up. And all the engineers says what you're saying. It's safer, it's cheaper, it lasts longer, 50 to 100 years, I'm told, that the fiber optic will, and then the bandwidth of the amount of data. Am I correct? That a lot more data can go down that pipe. I compare it, maybe I'm wrong, but tell me, wireless is like a pop bottle and the fiber optics is more like the ocean. Is that a kind of a good visual?
Oh, exactly. Under no metric is wireless superior.
No metric.
Under no metric, except telecom profits. And that's why they want BEAD money, the taxpayer infrastructure money to bridge the broadband digital divide, to move from fiber to the last mile to everyone's home to wireless, fixed wireless. They want the towers, especially the 5G small cell towers, put on every other street pole, closer and closer to your bedroom and your children's classrooms. And they wanted to monetize our data and also to get infrastructure profits when they have to replace antennas that have a short life, and just the regular upkeep that is required with the expensive energy usage, because wireless also is known as an energy hog.
So in fact, it is not green. Our mayor in Boise, she touts that this is clean and green.
No. In fact, studies show that by 2030, the communications industry will be responsible for half of the climate emissions. Not that, personally, a lot of us believe some of the science behind that, but they do. And so under their science, a huge chunk, half, is going to come from the communications industry. And the section of the communications industry that is an energy hog is the wireless industry.
Yeah.
So the evidence shows that that is bunk.
So our electrical rates are going up, 13% from Idaho Power this year, in 1 year. So with AI and wireless, we're going to have higher energy prices.
No question. And
which for the farmers here in Idaho, irrigation, they rely upon electricity to drive those pumps to pull that water out of those wells and fire up those big sprinklers that they've got throughout the state. Because everyone's went to pivots. There's not many people left.
And it's going to get worse.
Yeah, and not a lot of people have tore out their hand lines because it's labor intensive, and they've went to these big pivots which take electricity, and their bills are huge. So it's going to get their bills are going to go up.
Well, are you speaking of the copper landlines?
Well, I'm just saying that the rates of electricity are going to go up because of the usage, because of wireless, more towers, more consumption of electricity can drive the prices up. That might be a little off topic, but let's continue on. All right, don't go anywhere, but write this down. And I'll put this in the show notes on the podcast if you don't get it written down. But what you want to do is call Representative Russ Fulcher's office and ask him to pull back bills HR 2289 and HR 6803 and tell them we don't want to see any more cell towers installed until there are actually true safety studies that have been performed following Robert F. Kennedy's lead at HHS. You call his office at 208-888-3188. I'll have all of the information in the podcast show notes, wholebodydetoxshow.com. Don't go anywhere. We got more to share. I'll be right back. Hey, if you want to work in a fun learning environment, you love to care for people, you have a great personality, quick on your feet, we're looking for colon hydrotherapists. It's part-time. We have some openings in the week, in the mornings from about 8:30 till about 1. And from about 12:30 till 5, and we also have a Saturday opening. So give us a call, 208-378-9911, 208-378-9911, if you'd like to explore about being a colon hydrotherapist at Living Waters.
Once in a lifetime, a healing tool comes across your path that can really change the ability for the body to heal naturally and quickly. We have found such a tool, and it has changed the way my family lives and how our clients at Living Waters are helping to heal their body. It's called phototherapy, and phototherapy is the ability of your body using waves of light to turn on your body's ability to make its own stem cells. No surgeries, just simply a little Band-Aid size patch that can activate your body to make stem cells. As you age, you're producing less and less stem cells, and by age 60, you're making none. So when it comes to healing and repairing, it is a long process. We can now speed that process up by using phototherapy. Go over to stemcellpatch.net and watch the videos there. And go ahead and try these patches for a few months. These patches have helped so many of our clients reverse pain, help speed up the healing, sleep better, and on and on. You'll see some of the testimonials over there. It's an amazing little tool that you should be using right now. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, you can now be increasing your body's ability to make the stem cells on its own. Stemcellpatch.net, or call the office at 208-378-9911.
Nothing is more exciting than seeing a client shed their diseases and symptoms caused from accumulated toxins from the chemicals in our foods, the clothes we wear, and the air we breathe, and by cleansing through colon hydrotherapy and treating the whole body naturally. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
My name's Richard. I come to Living Waters because I was low on energy and for my memory, and I've accomplished both. Living Waters did it for me. Thank you, Living Water.
My name is Beata. I came to Living Water Wellness because also I have problem with carpal tunnels. And now I move my hands. It doesn't hurt. I don't feel tension. So thank you.
I came into Living Waters because I've suffered with allergies and asthma my whole life. I was recently diagnosed with EOE, which is where your food gets stuck in your esophagus from high eosinophils in my blood. Since I've been here, I have more energy. I have hardly any mucus, and I can think more clearly. I feel better. My skin feels better. Thank you, Living Waters.
I came to Living Waters because I've had a persistent rash on my face for 2 years. I also have migraines that go along with my menses. I have brain fog, lack of focus and motivation, and I'm on medicine for thyroid and my pituitary gland. Since coming to Living Waters, I no longer have my rash. I do not have any sugar cravings, and I have lots of motivation and focus. Thank you, Living Waters.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on the link 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video and check out this hundreds of clients who healed from their symptoms under the Success Stories tab. Or call the office at 208-3789-911. That's 208-3789-911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience, may not be right for you. Talk to a healthcare professional to see if cleansing is right for you. Welcome back to the Whole Body Detox Show. David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center, where miracles begin by healing from within. Today we're talking about a very important subject I call the existential threat to all humankind, including all of our mammals and all of our pollinators, and that's about 2 bills that preempt states from deciding how they rule and legislate where cell towers can go. Please call Representative Fulcher's office, area code 208-888-3188, and tell him to pull bills H.R. 2289 and H.R. 6503 until there's been proven safety studies. And why can't the states decide for themselves how they regulate and where they choose to put these towers? That's a great question indeed. Now I'll go back. Please share this with as many people as you can. We need to get the information out. Go to the podcast Whole Body Detox Show, wherever you get your podcast at. We're on all the major platforms. Share the show. Do give us a review and subscribe. We'd appreciate that. It helps us a lot. And if you're in Boise, Idaho, you can just go to our livingwaterscleanse.com, scroll down, hit the big G, and give us a review right there and tell us number one thing you learned while listening to the Whole Body Detox Show.
There is an on-topic element to that, and it's the copper landlines that I mentioned.
Okay.
And that's a critical issue. Copper landlines are our lifeline. And so it's not just fiber and cable that we need for broadband, but we need the copper landlines for your telephone, especially if a natural disaster collapses cell service, in which case your only way to access emergency services is through your phone landline. So telecom, the carriers, want to discontinue use of copper landlines. The FCC has given its approval to tear those landlines out, and Congress even has bills to do so.
Oh my gosh.
So that is something we did not want to allow to happen, similar to the smaller water pressure in your toilets and showers and the LED light bulbs that are dangerous. We want to go back to incandescent light bulbs. We have to pay attention to all these things. And as far as the farms you mentioned, there are even some politicians who have a background in dairy farming, and they, among at least, should know about the danger of precision agriculture, which was a bill in the last Congress and which has passed the House in this Congress, directing the FCC to promote wireless reliance by farmers and Elon Musk's satellites. What farmers should be learning is that there is a court case that ordered the shutdown of a 4G tower that the judge blamed for culling 20% of that farmer's cows and depleting his milk yield by the same percentage. Other farmers in Switzerland have complained about blindness among calves. And then Republican congressional staffers have told us, for example, for the senator of Wisconsin, the dairy state, reports of self-harming among cows grazing too close to a cell tower. And satellite relies on transmission towers that industry will goad farmers to put on their barns. And then RFID tags on the necks of cows, or even swallowed. There's even an option for that coming down the pike for remote monitoring. Any farmer that wants to do precision agriculture doesn't need any of these bills or taxpayer subsidies to do so. They can purchase a private wireless network and use a drone, GPS, and their laptops to remotely move their livestock or monitor their crops.
And they're already doing
So if
that.
you want to,
They're already doing
yeah,
that. Yeah.
do that, and you don't need taxpayer subsidies to incent more transmitters because cows are suffering. They're very sensitive to electromagnetic radiation. Also,
Well, back up.
it's
You said a
expensive.
big, this is huge. I like to know how many billions of dollars. Just culling their herds 20%.
In that one court case, the judge agreed with the farmer's allegation that that nearby cell tower was responsible for the 20% death rate among his cows and the milk yield depletion by that same percentage, 20%.
I wonder how many dollars
And
that is. I wonder how many dollars across the industry that would be. That's got to be billions.
well, yeah, well, we're just getting out.
And
there are
Idaho's a
other-
big dairy state. I mean, all the California dairy market came to central South Idaho, Twin Falls, Jerome area. That's a huge dairy area. That's where Chobani yogurt plant is at, and there's a big cheese factory there because all the dairy farms came up there. So you're talking about we put more towers down there. Those farmers in those areas are going to be losing cows, and their production, their yield's going to go down.
Not just towers, but as the precision agriculture bills get passed, that's going to lead to smaller transmitter towers on the barn tops and more use of RFID tags outside and inside the cows and around sensors around the pastures. So it's going to get worse. And when you densify radiation, it becomes cumulative, so it's an exponential effect negatively on the flora and fauna. And it's expensive because the upkeep of this new variable expense of precision wireless equipment and facilities is going to bankrupt farmers on the margin. And that's going to lead to more purchase of American land by Bill Gates' world economic friends, or Chinese adversaries. And we don't want that. And plus, it's insecure. Former SEC Chair Tom Wheeler criticized 5G for being inherently insecure. And so that's going to expose our domestic food supply to hacking by our adversaries. So it's dangerous for flora and fauna. It's bankrupting for farmers who are marginal and can't afford the variable cost. And it's insecure. So it's going to expose us to our adversaries. So I really discourage Republicans from continuing to carry the water of telecom when we need to support regenerative farming, upgrade our farming techniques, get them to help them more easily directly sell to consumers, the craft food movement, get those direct relationships with families and property owners that want to have better quality food. That's the direction farmers need to go.
Well, a lot to unpack. So, in the farming, we're a big farming state. We're a big ag state. Now, I had Dr. Martin Paul on several years ago. He was beginning to write a paper, and he told me two things in that interview that just really stuck out at me. One, he didn't own a cell phone. That was interesting. Two, he reminded me or shared with me, and I had picked up on it, but I just wasn't cognizant.
So the way in which you get biological effect is by forces on some charged groups, electrically charged groups in your body. So these are chemical groups, and they occur in a particular structure called the voltage sensor that detects electrical changes across the membrane that surrounds all of our cells, the plasma membrane. So, and what they do is they act to open up a calcium channel, and they allow huge amounts of calcium to flow into the cell, so the cells of our body. So extracellular calcium is usually about 10,000 times higher than intracellular calcium. So our cells use a lot of energy keeping calcium levels low, because when the calcium levels get too high in the cell of our body, they cause all kinds of problems. That's exactly what EMFs do. They cause these channels to open up. They allow calcium to flow into the cell. It's the excess calcium in the cell that produces most, if not all, of the biological. And so we know a lot about calcium. We know a lot about what it does in the cells of our bodies. And so, you can see very easily how you get effects, brain on our reproductive cells, on our hormone systems, on almost every cell in the body, and on the immune system. And one of the things that happens when you let calcium in is you generate free radicals, which attack the DNA of our cells, cause oxidative stress, which is involved in almost every single chronic disease you can think of. And as I'm sure you know,
He says, David, I was driving across Eastern Washington from Washington State, where he used to teach this last summer. And he says, there's just not any bugs in the windshield anymore. I said, Mo, you're right. I was driving back and forth from Twin Falls to Boise that summer. And I was like, hell, I don't have to get out and squeegee my windshield like I used to. That's odd. So it's killing our pollinators. It's killing our bees. And then he said he was writing a paper about the forests. Of course, we're a big state. 63% is national forest or government land. And we got a lot of trees and we've seen a lot of big fires. Well, back when he told me that, they had those big fires in Oregon. He says, I believe that this is increasing the terpenes in the trees. And this is what's causing these trees. And if you think of terpenes, it's like adding gas to trees. So once a fire gets going, it explodes. And what do we have last summer, or the summer before last, we had about a 400,000 acre fire that went from about 50 miles from Boise all the way up to the center of the state, burned out. And it's just pencil. It's just like you go through those forests now, it's just burnt sticks. There's no forest.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the forest because several of those forest fires were caused by fixed wireless facilities, lashing wires, and so on. And we have evidence to back up those claims. And the Republicans made it worse in the previous Congress with passage of sections 141 through 3 of H.R. 6492. An otherwise pretty good parks bill. It just had those sections that no one really paid attention to, except for us. And those sections will carpet our national parks with antennas. And one of those sections will actually deputize to lobbyists of telecom on where to put those antennas, which is the worst example of corporate welfare. And that will make the forest inhospitable to the one third of Americans already sensitive to electromagnetic radiation. Many injured people, you and I know, seek solace in the forest because they can't tolerate the pain and disability from the wireless mesh in the urban areas. Well, this new law is going to ruin the parks as a haven for the wireless sensitive.
Oh, I know some of those people here in Idaho. I have a dual sport motorcycle, and so I went on it's called the backdoor discovery route. You're going through all the forests of Idaho, and I couldn't believe I was in Yellow Pine. I had cell service. I went to Warren. I had cell service. I was in the Magruder Trail, and I had cell service, which is out in the middle of flipping nowhere between Darby, Montana, and Elk City, Idaho. That's used to be very, very, very remote. Well, I guess not now. I got cell service in parts of that. It blew me away.
99% of the country is accessible by the 4G towers I mentioned before. They're big, they broadcast for miles, sometimes double-digit miles. So the sections I mentioned are really intended to bring small cell 5G towers, really to allow campers in the Winnebagos to download Netflix.
Oh my gosh.
The justification for those sections was for the remote hikers and sportsmen in distress to access emergency services. Well, the problem with that justification is every cell phone now, you can text 911 at least if you don't have cell service. And your experience shows you do have cell service in most of these places. If you don't, you still can text 911. Or if you're an experienced hiker, and most people in remote hiking are experienced, know that they can purchase gadgets that will help with the emergency access if they get in trouble. So this was an unjustified section that not only is going to hurt the injured, it's going to hurt the veterans who now are prescribed visits to the parks. On Capitol Hill, I lived next to a doctor who started the Park at RX program. Well, how are you going to prescribe a post-traumatic stress syndrome grounding visit by a veteran into a park if it's full of towers which are going to aggravate his DNA and cause neurological problems? Not to mention, those of us who aren't sensitive, I think a lot of us go to parks to escape digitalization.
I don't go there to watch a movie.
Yeah. So, I have a park near my house in Virginia, here in Colonial Williamsburg. I go into the park there to ground, and I think you're in the natural health.
We teach grounding on our 10-day healing retreat. It's a major factor. Go out, take your socks off, your shoes off, stick your feet in dirt, get grounded. The negative ions coming into your body is so beneficial. So when you're talking about grounding, it's a health effect that your body needs to get to homeostasis. So yeah, it's very, very important.
Yeah, you can't reverse the actual epidemic of this Western world chronic disease unless you keep the forest free of the antennas spraying wireless radiation everywhere. You need to go barefoot in the grass, in the parks, hug the trees, touch the trees. You do medicinally benefit. We are electrical beings. we do need to mesh with this nature of which we're a part. Sorry if some people find that to be a bit of woo, but these are the times we're in. If you want to be healthy, get smart about this stuff.
There's 50,000 Chinese. I'm gonna go on a little conspiracy trip here for a hot moment. But am I wrong? If I want to mess with businesses in the U.S., I mean, everything's on the cloud. If I take out towers and we're relying on all our data from towers as a business, so I can schedule my appointments, I can download my files, upload my files, all this stuff, especially in medicine, they rely upon it a lot. I'm going to take out the cell towers. Wouldn't that be the first go-to?
Yeah, and there are people concerned about the electricity grid.
And electricity grid, yeah.
Yeah, and in the FCC proposal I mentioned, 25276, which will preempt property owners' ability to cooperate with local officials to zone towers safely away from our neighborhoods. Opponents of that proposal did come also from the privacy advocates who said that wireless radiation not only is dangerous, but personally, it's politically dangerous because they could use the wireless mesh to spy on you and eventually coerce your behavior. With smart meters, they can shut off your power if you use too much, or if you're a dissident, they can eventually come up with a behavior score and coerce your behavior that way. And with digital currency and programmable currency, deny you access to your money and, pretty much effectively ruin your life. So this is not just a matter of safety or aesthetics, as people like to say in the current world, but also your sovereignty and survival. We have to get involved.
You give me great hope, Charles. You're just giving me so much hope and inspiration here of all these.
Well, I mean, we have RFK there.
It's really sad. It really is.
Well,
and the people
RFK
just don't know it.
I mean, RFK is there. And the Maha, people and the House Freedom Caucus people like Mr. Fulcher and others, they have been good on Maha issues with informed consent. We just need them to broaden that idea of informed consent to include all the environmental vectors in which we are hurt.
What do you say?
Wireless.
Yeah. What do you say? Okay, here's my. I'm just thinking power and phones went out to the nation, especially during the 30s and 40s, and we didn't have the dense of population back then. If we could put a copper wire to every house back then, why can't we put fiber optics to every house today? Is it really more expensive or not?
No. I said earlier, the Benton Group, the economists of the industry, are pro-wireless. And they said after 3 decades, there are no more savings from using fixed wireless equipment over wired. So if infrastructure should be based on a long-term planning idea, not short-term politics, obviously it should be wired. So in the long run, after 3 decades, and that study was biased towards wireless, so it's even shorter than that. The affordable long-term play for bridging the broadband digital divide is a fiber or a cable connection. And maybe the copper landlines too, if they can figure out how to make that work out for broadband connections too. But for mobile wireless, the 4G towers are tall and they're out there by the highways and the mountaintops. Keep them out there. They broadcast 20 miles. Yeah. Okay, so you don't need to have them outside your bedrooms. And don't let telecom talking points around tech neutrality fool you. That's just a political play to get taxpayer money that's now going to fiber.
Maybe you can delineate here for our public. I heard this we've got another hearing up in Sandpoint, and they kept talking about we got to get broadband, we got to get broadband, we got to get it put into the homes. And as I understand the FCC rules, that there's 2 different titles, and I think it's Title 1 that's for broadband, right? And the FCC has basically stayed out of that, as I understand. And that's for your. So what's broadband? Broadband is your emails, your Netflix, your all that kind of stuff, right? That's the data. But cell phone and texting, which is really all we need when we're out and about, right? There we go. For an emergency, you need to be able to use your phone. Okay, cell phone and text. You don't need to be able to have to download a movie in the middle of Yellow Pine or Cascade, Idaho, out in the Tules. That's not an emergency. Am I wrong?
No, but that is what sections 141 through 3 are going to allow the kiddos to do in the Winnebago, in the middle of nowhere. And parents, if you're downloading movies in the middle of, name the park in Idaho or Yellowstone.
Yeah, if you're in Stanley, Idaho at Redfish Lake, and you can get cell service there now. It's crazy. You can go into the White Clouds. It's a national, reserve up in the Sawtooths. Again, they've got all these rules and regulations. The Forest Service does on what you can build there, who can build. I mean, you can't build anymore. I mean, who's there is there, and that's it. But yet they want to come in. They want everything the old style the Forest Service does as far as the houses. But yet they want to be able to pump this high stream data into these areas. It just makes no sense, especially what you're saying is causing harm long term in those, not only to the forest but to the animals.
They're not giving you the full story. The full story is that we've already paid a surcharge on our landline for more than a decade for a last mile wireline connection to every building. That's broadband to fixed positions, your house, your office building. When you're out in the car or walking around, you have an acceptable infrastructure of 4G towers zoned appropriately far from where we live and work and play. That's what you need to imagine when you think of the broadband issue. What you need to be aware of is tech neutrality talking points from industry that want to replace that wire to your house with a small cell 5G tower on a street pole or on a new pole right in front of your front yard, which they will be able to do if the FCC finalizes their current proposal, 25276, or if somehow Congress passes HR 2289. We don't want Congress or FCC to take away the power of local zoning. Local zoning is the only way by which property owners can safely set back these towers away from our bedrooms and children's classrooms. We need to demand that fiber or cable to every home because we've already paid for it. If we have to use taxpayer money, which is the current situation, okay, don't let that taxpayer money be diverted by telecom to fixed wireless equipment. They're trying to replace that safe, fast, reliable, secure wireline, fiber or cable with an array of 5G antennas that have to be densely packed to work. They only broadcast 500 feet in some cases. That kind of power and radiation is deadly, and it's also going to violate your privacy and lead to a behavior coercing score that's going to limit your daily activities. So politically and medicinally, this is an issue that you need to care about. Do not let telecom lie. They are profit seekers and they give good service, but they're exploiting confusion to replace your fiber and cable with dangerous 5G small cells on every other street light and in front of your bedroom and kids' classroom. Don't let them get away with that.
Not only that, but we had a physicist who worked in the Army during the Iraq War, and he says, David, these are called directed energy weapons. We use these as weapons in Iraq. These can be weapons. These can be weaponized. Do you know more about that? Do you know about what's happening there with the type of frequency?
Well, the 5G is a new system. It's called beamforming, as opposed to spraying ubiquitously in all directions like 4G.
Yeah.
That's why 4G broadcasts for 20 miles in all directions and gives us nationwide service.
Right.
It's appropriately zoned far from where we live and work. 5G is a business-to-business communication system. So they want to have a dense array of small cell 5G towers.
All right, don't go anywhere, but write this down, and I'll put this in the show notes on the podcast if you don't get it written down. But what you want to do is call Representative Russ Fulcher's office and ask him to pull back bills HR 2289 and HR 6803 and tell him we don't want to see any more cell towers installed until there are actually true safety studies that have been performed following Robert F. Kennedy's lead at HHS. You call his office at 208-888-3188. I'll have all of the information in the podcast show notes, wholebodydetoxshow.com. Don't go anywhere. We got more to share. I'll be right back. Hey, if you want to work in a fun learning environment, you love to care for people, you have a great personality, quick on your feet, we're looking for colon hydrotherapists. It's part-time. We have some openings in the week, in the mornings from about 8:30 till about 1, and from about 12:30 till 5, and we also have a Saturday opening. So give us a call, 208-378-9911, 208-378-9911, if you'd like to explore about being a colon hydrotherapist at Living Waters.
Once in a lifetime, a healing tool comes across your path that can really change the ability for the body to heal naturally and quickly. We have found such a tool, and it has changed the way my family lives and how our clients at Living Waters are helping to heal their body. It's called phototherapy, and phototherapy is the ability of your body using waves of light to turn on your body's ability to make its own stem cells. No surgeries, just simply a little Band-Aid size patch that can activate your body to make stem cells. As you age, you're producing less and less stem cells, and by age 60, you're making none. So when it comes to healing and repairing, it is a long process. We can now speed that process up by using phototherapy. Go over to stemcellpatch.net and watch the videos there. And go ahead and try these patches for a few months. These patches have helped so many of our clients reverse pain, help speed up the healing, sleep better, and on and on. You'll see some of the testimonials over there. It's an amazing little tool that you should be using right now. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, you can now be increasing your body's ability to make stem cells on its own. Stemcellpatch.net or call the office at 208-3789-911.
Nothing is more exciting than seeing a client shed their diseases and symptoms caused from accumulated toxins from the chemicals in our foods, the clothes we wear, and the air we breathe, then by cleansing through colon hydrotherapy and treating the whole body naturally. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
My name's Richard. I came to Living Waters because I was low on energy and for my memory, and I've accomplished both. Living Waters did it for me. Thank you, Living Water.
My name is Beata. I came to Living Water Wellness because also I have problem with corporal tunnels, and now I move my hands. It doesn't hurt. I don't feel tension. So thank you.
I came into Living Waters because I've suffered with allergies and asthma my whole life. I was recently diagnosed with EOE, which is where your food gets stuck in your esophagus from high eosinophils in my blood. Since I've been here, I have more energy. I have hardly any mucus, and I can think more clearly. I feel better. My skin feels better. Thank you, Living Waters.
I came to Living Waters because I've had a persistent rash on my face for 2 years. I also have migraines that go along with my menses. I have brain fog, lack of focus and motivation, and I'm on medicine for thyroid and my pituitary gland. Since coming to Living Waters, I no longer have my rash. I do not have any sugar cravings, and I have lots of motivation and focus. Thank you, Living Waters.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on the link 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video and check out this hundreds of clients who healed from their symptoms under the Success Stories tab. Or call the office at 208-3789-911. That's 208-3789-911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience, may not be right for you. Talk to a healthcare professional to see if cleansing is right for you. Welcome back to the Whole Body Detox Show. David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center, where miracles begin by healing from within. And today we're talking about a very important subject I call the existential threat to all humankind, including all of our mammals and all of our pollinators, and that's about 2 bills that preempt states from deciding how they rule and legislate where cell towers can go. Please call Representative Fulcher's office, area code 208-888-3188, and tell him to pull bills H.R. 2289 and H.R. 6503 until there's been proven safety studies. And why can't the states decide for themselves how they regulate and where they choose to put these towers? That's a great question indeed. Now I'll go back. Please share this with as many people as you can. We need to get the information out. Go to the podcast Whole Body Detox Show, wherever you get your podcast at. We're on all the major platforms. Share the show. Do give us a review and subscribe. We'd appreciate that. It helps us a lot. And if you're in Boise, Idaho, you can just go to our livingwaterscleanse.com, scroll down, hit the big G, and give us a review right there and tell us number one thing you learned while listening to the Whole Body Detox Show.
That broadcast with heavy power and heavy radiation for the Internet of Things communication and data monetization. So the sensors in your TV, your refrigerator, your thermostat, your smart meter for utilities, for electricity, gas, and water, and the small cell towers on every other street pole. They want to monetize that data and eventually coerce you to profit. It's not in your interest because you don't need that system to operate as a human being in a modern society. You already have, for your cell phones, when you walk around and drive, big 4G towers by the highways, on the mountaintops. You don't need them close to you on the street lights near your house. For your house, all you need is that wire to your house. You don't need that 5G small cell on the street light. Those workers are digging trenches in your neighborhoods. Let them, putting fiber in there, cables. That'll connect your house. Inside your house, if you want a router, God bless you. Hopefully you'll learn to replace that with the Ethernet to your laptops. But if you're not ready for that, fine. You'll have your router inside to help you with your mobile connections inside. But that's the distinction. We have to have a safe deployment for broadband connections in this world. The 4G towers are okay. They're out there, they work. They'll help you with the cell phone communication when you're driving and walking. For your laptop and devices in the house, you want to have a fiber or cable connected to your house. You don't want to sacrifice safety for whatever telecom wants to con you into getting. So that's the difference. These 5G, can be used as a weaponry because it is beamforming. So the Pentagon does have a crowd control system called active denial. It is used in nefarious ways by our adversaries against our diplomats. You may have heard of Havana syndrome. The diplomats in Cuba and China complained of symptoms similar to those suffered by beamforming wireless weaponry, such as active denial, crowd control. There are experts who say that was the source of the weaponry used to put down the Venezuelan military. And that's how we extracted Maduro without any casualties. We just use a 5G weapon with high power, and that caused nausea, headaches, and it just disabled the enemies. They just crouched down and fell on the floor in pain and discomfort. So that is what they want to put on every other street lamp across the world when it's not needed, because we already have an adequate infrastructure of 4G towers out by the highways and the mountaintops, and they already covered 99% of the country.
Wow.
Let those towers do their job. Don't let them encroach on your neighborhoods or your kids' school or your nearby parks.
Well, it's not only that, but as you know, it's creating glioblastoma brain cancer. The AFib rates are up through the roof. I can't believe how many young people I meet today that tell me, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing good. Oh, yeah, but I was just in the hospital. I had AFib." And, they're 40 years old, 50 years old, healthy people, and they've got AFib.
Well, the science shows that at least one-third of us are already sensitive to wireless radiation, up to 5% seriously so. And one survey of studies, a meta-study, found that 80% of studies found harm if it wasn't funded by industry. It's been found dangerous by the EPA. It's been found dangerous by the FDA's National Toxicology Program. And when FCC claimed it wasn't dangerous, that claim in 2021 in DC's Federal Appeals Court was remanded or thrown out for capriciously ignoring the evidence. We have whistleblower testimony from industry admitting cancer and special caution for children. So I know of no honest study that shows that wireless radiation doesn't have some danger. I think people know not to put the cell phone by their ears. Most people now are using speakerphone. A lot of folks are hearing that they should put their cell phone in airplane mode when it's in your pocket. And when you sleep, you should turn the cell phone off. You should turn your router off at night. If you have a smart meter like this, you should this is an analog meter. You should opt out of the smart meter and request the old analog meter or whatever the state offers you. And you should cooperate, if you're a property owner, with your local officials to pass ordinances zoning towers away from your neighborhood by several thousand feet, a mile. Same with your schools. Zone towers far away from your kids and where you go hike, your nearby parks. So that's the solution. We can have convenience. We can have cell phone access in a way that is safe. That's all. We're not Luddites. We like modern conveniences like the next person, but we don't want to be fried or spied on in the process.
So you mentioned the 2021 court case, right?
Yep.
And the FCC was told to do what?
Go back to the drawing board because FCC claimed that its wireless radiation exposure limits were adequate, even though those limits stemmed from 1996, which actually stemmed from earlier studies going back to the 1980s, well before smart tech was even invented. And the DC Federal Appeals Court responded to that claim from FCC that such a claim was capricious and arbitrary FCC clearly had not gone through more than 10,000 pages of scientific evidence of biological harm, which means you can't feel it. It's agitating your cells, as opposed to thermal harm, where your skin heats up. If your skin doesn't heat up, the government doesn't consider you being harmed, which is ridiculous. The harm from wireless radiation isn't felt. Uh, once you start suffering symptoms, it's too late. You've been suffering for a while without feeling it. So the harm is what's called biological harm to humans and the environment. And so we don't have updated safety exposure limits as we stand right now. We're flying blind. We're deploying antennas without knowing what the safe exposure limits are. That's insane. So thank goodness for RFK for ordering yet another study at HHS to find what is actually safe. And to think that our Republican friends who did so well during COVID by opposing Biden's vaccine mandate don't see the exact parallel with telecom. No informed consent, utter capture of the regulatory process, suppression of the science, no liability for industry when they harm voters. Republicans understand that when it comes to vaccines, but somehow don't see the exact same dynamic with forcing antennas outside our bedrooms and kids' classrooms. Where is the disconnect there? That's what I've been trying to figure out for 2 years, lobbying congressional staffers every week with injured Americans in every state, including yours. Hank's story is so sad. His house is right in the middle of a triangle of beams from 3 different towers.
And he's on a little hill, and the tower's 2,000 feet away. I mean, it's a good distance away, but
yeah, and one has to think, there is gamesmanship in the current law around claiming a gap in service. A lot of local officials, being relatively ignorant, don't make telecom justify their claim of a gap in service before approving the siting of a cell tower. So what were all those cell towers needed at those spots that they exist now near Hank's house? I don't think we can ever know unless we had an engineer go out there and examine it. And that's
we did on a couple of towers, and we got one stopped. We went out there, and then they finally, wireless kind of got smart, and they went out the last minute, and they did their supposed readings at the last minute, and the county commissioners denied it. And it was for a broadband tower. And of course, he says, well, Verizon's going to co-locate. So we need this because this will solve the solution of having multiple towers if you do one. But it was for basically for movies and emails. That's all it was for. And of course, the judge incorrectly ruled against the county and allowed a broadband tower to go in. And get to your point, people don't understand the technology or the rules, especially these judges.
In that case, that's where the people wanting broadband should have relied on a fiber or a cable connected to their house to download those movies on their devices. And that's where industry instead wants that tower to replace that fiber or cable connection. That is the fight.
Well, here's the big money thing. My father-in-law was in the cable industry, and I was in there for a hot moment. And I was one of the first satellite dealers in the state. And he built up a lot of small. Twin Falls was the only cable company in 1970 in the state of Idaho, and he ran that system. And if you look at the value of a cable system in those days, it was something like every subscriber's worth on a capitalization rate. You're gonna say, okay, that home, it's paying me $30 a month or $50 a month, whatever it is. That money over 10 years is worth X, right? And we capped that at a certain rate. I think in those days it was 8 to 10%. And then our customers worth, I don't know, $20,000 or $30,000, let's say. So you see what wireless is doing now is they're working to steal those customers from the cable companies. And so their value on the balance sheet, their stock value goes up based upon the amount of subscribers who are subscribing and using that for their cable service. What shocks me is how cable's been has been a little too quiet in this arena because they are losing subscribers. And wireless also makes money by being able to track you, just like we do in our business. We geofence, we track you. We want to know if you're going to a gastroenterologist, okay, that's a customer for me who has gut problems, right? We're going to do that. That's how they're collecting that data. And I don't understand why Republicans and even libertarians are not saying, hey, this is not good. It's not good long-term for all the reasons you mentioned.
Yeah, libertarians don't have as much problem with data monetization for private sector reasons as they do when it crosses over into behavior coercion for political reasons.
Yeah, how do you separate
And so
those?
pardon me?
How do you separate that? I don't know how you could do that.
Well, yeah, that's another conversation to have. And I agree with you. Not only are cable industries silent, they could be helping us. Fiber companies could be louder as well. Maybe they are on the backside, but I think I've heard that some fiber companies want to get in on the wireless business, or maybe they're owned by wireless companies, so they want to cross-subsidize. And that's why they're sneakily being silent, which is a betrayal. And it's like, where are the American values? I just wonder who runs this country, who runs this world, and also the realtors. A poll showed that 9 out of 10 buyers would not agree to a realtor offer of a home too close to a cell tower because they do crush home values by 20%. So why aren't more realtors involved? We have individual realtors involved. In Florida, we have a good group. But having them get their National Association of Realtors professionals to join us, that's a bridge too far right now. But imagine the power of the realtors helping us, or the power of the fiber company. So the counties are helping us, but only for zoning purposes, not for health reasons. That's fine. If it requires protecting zoning to help us, I'm fine with that. But, it's about privacy and safety to me, and honesty, because, the ideal broadband world is, as I described at the beginning, your family's past in cable and the fiber companies connecting the fixed buildings with a wire, and for mobile connectivity, 4G towers out there safely zoned, far from us, on the highways, on the mountaintops, in a way that honestly addresses gaps in service. And we already have 99% coverage in this country, if not more. So this is a serious issue. People don't realize how serious it is. They want this convenience, and they don't want to acknowledge the evils. Now our kids are trying to get AirPods
Ugh.
in their ears, and the left and right wireless radiation goes through your brain to each side, and every kid wants an AirPod. Um, so thank goodness RFK is cooperating with governors to kick the cell phones out of the schools. And RFK is using the health reason as well. So he's getting the word out there. But we have a long way to go on this issue.
Okay, we got a long way to go. So okay, everyone listening to the show, what's the ask? What can they do? And what should they be doing today? What phone calls should they be making? And what are our key points? To sum all this up, we want to get a hold of Representatives Fulcher and all the others on the in Congress, right? In the I don't know where the bill's at now. Where is that bill currently?
It's pending House consideration. So we want Zooms with all U.S. reps and senators. Every American has 2 senators in every state. Don't worry, I'll do the talking along with Odette. All we need from constituents is the effort to schedule the Zoom. You would just say, find out who your U.S. rep is. For Fulcher, they can work through you because you're the connection with Fulcher, but other reps in Idaho and other Northwest states, we want your help to get the word out. We need Zooms. And just call or email or use the contact form at your U.S. rep's website. It's easy. Just click contact.
Is there a website link now from one of the national organizations? Is there we can put a link in our show notes to have people click on that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could do that to send an email. So yeah, that's the easiest thing to do is to just put your zip code in and have an email sent. So if that's all you'll do, that's great. You could join the e-list of our National Health Federation and be invited by doing that to our monthly Zooms. The next one is February 20th. We'll discuss our upcoming conference in Dallas, April 23rd, where I'll be leading a wireless panel, probably with a couple other experts if you want to meet in person, if you can get to Dallas. But I have a Substack that I write about these issues, all MAHA issues, as well as health payment issues, how to become a cash patient, because health and education are the worst industries. They're the most expensive lines on the graph because they're top-heavy cartels. Both of them need to be undercut with entrepreneurs, education and healthcare. And so get involved any way you can.
I'll put all this in our podcast show notes. If you're listening on the radio, go over to Whole Body Detox Show, wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll have a detailed list of links, people to contact, and to get more information about this. But you need to join the fight. We need more voices to be heard and to make aware. I know there's a new person that just got appointed. He lives up in the Stanley Basin. It's Michael Boren. He's in charge of the parks, I heard. And so he'd be a good guy to contact to help slow that down and putting these things in parks. I think they did a great job of marketing. It's the digital divide. Oh my God, we're not going to be able to talk. But in 2020, when I was talking before the Republican summer meeting here for the state of Idaho, these guys in the outland area, Driggs, Victor, eastern part of the state, it's the only way we're going to get our technology, Dave, is we have got to have those 5G wireless towers. Of course, they didn't understand that. And I said, well, do you have a phone line? Yeah. You have a power line? Yeah. Well, why can't we just put another line down the fiber optics down the poles? And they just looked at me with a blank stare.
Exactly. Big tech, of which telecommunications is a part, is guilty of hundreds of billions of dollar crime for stealing our landline surcharges for their wireless schemes, and for continuing to try to replace fiber and cable with dangerous towers that aren't needed to fill gaps in service.
Yeah.
This is a crime, just like pharma is guilty of a crime that increasingly the people will become aware of with their vaccine over vaccination in terms of causing chronic disease. RFK, God bless him, is fixing all these environmental vectors. And it gets to the pesticides and GMOs and then the geoengineering. All these environmental insults are making us sick, and it's taking away our sovereignty and privacy. We need to reclaim our country as Americans and insist on honesty with these issues. We're not being told the truth.
Yeah. So we've learned about the dairy cows, production down 20%, herds culling 20%. We've heard about the forest fires, more susceptible to fire. We can get better data and ideally claw back our money we paid into the wireless industry, that they've taken all that money from us to put cable fiber optics down the poles. And we know it decreases your home values. That was one of the big things in 2020 that people said, well, if you should have told me it decreases the home values, I would have voted for it. It's going to affect my real estate, my back pocket. That's important to me. And of course, we did see in that subdivision out in Eagle where he lost those are big, expensive lots, $500,000 lots, and he lost sales because the tower got approved eventually.
Well, karma is poetic justice, and these bastards deserve everything coming to them. Because this is hundreds of billions of dollars. A third of the country is sick. Half the country has chronic disease. And America wants justice.
And they have no liability.
No liability, no informed consent, not being honest with the science, utter capture of the regulatory process.
That blew me away when they had no liability. There's like the vaccine makers. They have no liability, and neither does the big wireless.
And big biotech almost got it in the appropriations bill for pesticides. And they're trying to pass it in states, including Idaho.
I know. We've denied it 3 times. They're coming again, I've heard.
They passed it in Georgia. A libertarian like me can talk for hours on how to create the perfect market, but you can't have voluntary exchange of anything that's peaceful unless bad actors suffer for hurting us. You have to have liability in a free market for it to work. Otherwise, you're going to let the ignorant folks build up the regulatory process. I'm not a fan of regulations and bureaucracy. It's better to have liability.
Right.
I think liability is much more precise and effective and intimidating than a corruptible regulatory process that gets captured until it's worthless.
Yeah.
Vaccines, cell towers, geoengineering, pesticides, GMOs, all these things are bad news.
They are. Charles Froman, I thank you for coming on the call and succinctly telling us what we need to do next. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be putting all this stuff in the show notes. Go to idahoansforsafetechnology.org. What's the national website is for the national call?
Well, the national call. If you Google the national call, you'll get it.
Okay.
And then my group, thenhf.com.
The NHF.
.com. We're the original Maha group before there was a Maha movement. And then the more focused wireless advocacy group is the National Call. So two
Okay.
these.
thenationalcall.com on both.
Let me just search it here real quick. thenationalcall.org.
Okay.
And if you go to the right drawdown menu, support us, you can sign up for an invitation to their semi-monthly Zooms to learn more.
Okay. Yep. And thenhf.com sign up newsletter. I got that one here too. Okay. I'll put all these in the show notes. Folks, we're all in this together. And I volunteer all my time. And we need more volunteers. Reach out to us at Items for Safe Technology here in Idaho. Wherever you're at, there's organizations in many states, but this national call is one to get on if you want to help us out. Or you can call me directly in my office. Our phone numbers, of course, are all over this podcast. And reach out to us, and I'll get you aligned with the right people if you want to help out, because we do need help, donations, money. We need all those things. Until next week, my friends, you have a blessed week.